What is going on, everybody? Welcome back to the show. Under Center, presented to you by Real Spiel Podcast, episode 3, I think. We are back with another one. We are officially back. I'm recording this on week 0. Kansas State and Iowa State is actually about to tip off right now. It was a long spring, it was a long summer, but we are finally back. We have real, meaningful football games. And I kind of wanted to bring one more preseason ish type episode before we get into week 1 content this week. I I should have probably done this slightly earlier, but nonetheless, week 1 is next weekend, so we still got plenty of time. But I wanted to get a preseason episode of my playoff predictions. The teams that I think are going to make the college football playoffs from each conference, my matchups, the team that are going to win the national championship. So yeah, this is not going to be too long of a video, just a quick playoff prediction. We'll be in and out, so let's get to it. So starting out, they did change the format this year for the college football playoffs. They went away with that week 4 seed where if you win the conference championship, you get a bye, which in theory, when they created that, it was created for 5 teams, and it was supposed to be the Big 12, the ACC, the SEC, the Big 10, and the Pac 12. Those 5 teams would have been your conference championship winners, and the top 4 seeds out of those would have got the bye. But then they Pac-12 dissolved, and now it's the Group of 5 champion gets that 5th seed, and it does not make sense to have a Group of 5 team getting a bye just because they won their conference championship and were ranked higher. So I like the way they changed the format this year. This year they're doing the Power Four conference championship winners. They still get an automatic bid, but then the teams will be seeded 1 through 12 based off the final polls, which again is much better. We're not going to get that weird thing where Penn State lost the Big Ten championship game, but they had the easiest path, and Oregon was the best team in the country, and they had the hardest path. So this makes a lot more sense. But enough yapping. Let's get into it. Um, yeah, let's get into my predictions and the teams that I think are going to be ranked where they are in the final polls. Starting out at number 1, I have Penn State. Like I've been telling you guys, I think Penn State is going to be the best team in the country this year. They're bringing back so much production, and not only so much production, but so much just talent all around. Their quarterback, their couple wide receiver or their running backs. They got a couple wide receivers, one from the transfer portal, and they got a couple young guys who are supposed to make an impact. I think James Franklin, I think he takes that step this year. I think Penn State takes the step, and I do think they're going to win the Big Ten. And I think they will get the number 1 overall seed. My number 2 overall seed will be Texas. I do think Texas will win the SEC. Um, I think again, I think as long as Arch Manning is just average, if he plays like Quinn Ewers did last year, then Texas will be just fine. There's so much talent around Arch Manning that he doesn't have to be this elite playmaker. But if he can just do what Quinn Ewers did last year, Texas will be fine. And I think that's their floor. And I think Arch Manning is going to be better than Quinn Ewers. So their ceiling is way higher as a team, but I think their floor is just what they were last year. But again, Arch Manning, I think he has so much more talent, and he's going to level up that team a little bit. And I think they are going to win the SEC and be number 2. I got Georgia. I think Georgia is going to be the SEC runner-ups. I think they're going to lose to Texas in the SEC championship game, a rematch from last year. I just like Kirby, and again, until I see Georgia lose a couple games, 2, 3, maybe 4 games, I just can't, in good faith, put them to have a down year. Kirby Smart just retools no matter who's out there. He won with a walk-on, back-to-back national championships with a walk-on, so I don't have a doubt that Gunnar Stockton can lead them deep into the playoffs. And Clemson will be my number 4 team. Clemson, I have winning the ACC. I think Clemson is going to go 11-1, really at worst this year. They have tough games against LSU, a tough game against South Carolina. They play Louisville. That's a tough game on the road. I think they lose one of those games, honestly, and especially if they lost the Louisville game and they beat LSU and South Carolina, their resume is going to be plenty good enough to be a top 4 seed and get a bye. They'll be a conference championship winner. They'll have 2 wins against the 2 good SEC teams. And they'll have a couple, decent wins in the ACC, but I think they'll have plenty in the resume to get a 4 seed. Ohio State will be my 5th seed. I have Ohio State as the Big Ten runner-ups. I do think they're going to take a because you can't. I was going to say I do think they're going to take a step back from last year's team, but honestly, last year's team wasn't amazing until the playoffs. So like, I do think that I don't know. It's kind of tough to say because they didn't really get it rolling until the playoffs. But talent wise, I think they're going to be a little step back from last year. That last year's team was just bloated. Um, but I do think Julian's saying it really doesn't matter in that Ryan Day system who's played quarterback. Even when Urban Meyer was there, they had JT Barrett back there, Braxton Miller, they had Cardale Jones, CJ Stroud, Justin Fields. It truly has not mattered who has been in that quarterback spot. They've always executed well. They've always, even Kyle McCord, who people were talking so much shit about, even Kyle McCord, I feel like Ohio State fans hated him. He brought you guys to 11-0 last game against Michigan, late fourth quarter turnover. If one play went different, you guys could have very well won that game, and it would have been Ohio State in the college football playoffs instead of Michigan. But even Calvin McCord, I know he still played extremely well back there. So again, I have complete faith that Julian Sang is gonna be able to compete and do well in that starting position. So yeah, I have Ohio State as the Big Ten runner-ups in my 5th seed in the playoffs, and then I have Notre Dame as the 6th seed. I think the Notre Dame's going to have just as good as the years last year. I think they've elevated in the quarterback position with CJ Carr. Um, their ground game, the offensive line game is going to be elite. Their defense is tough nosed and bringing back a lot of guys. And Marcus Freeman, man, he has got that thing rolling. So I think Notre Dame is going to be a top level team this year. So they're at 6. LSU at 7. This might be high for a lot of people, but I think this is the year for Brian Kelly. I'm not a big Brian Kelly guy. He just gives me weird vibes, man. He's always seems like he's putting on some type of front, but he is a good coach at the end of the day. He's won 29, 30 games in his first 3 years. And I think they are bringing Garrett Nussmeier back, and they're going to have a good running game. And Baker, the defensive coordinator, this is year 2 with him, I want to say. So I do think the defense is going to be much improved. They're bringing a couple guys back that had some injuries last year, a couple guys through the transfer portal. So they have the roster this year, and I think LSU will be in the playoffs and will be the 7th seed. Um, Alabama will be the 8th seed. I I I'm not as high on the quarterback position for Alabama as I am for Ohio State. Um, I think they're starting. I can't even think of his name. I get Julian saying in the quarterback they're starting Ty Simpson. They're starting Ty Simpson. Um, Alabama's going to be good. No, they're going to be good. They have a loaded roster all around. The quarterback position is going to be a little questionable. I need to see it before I can put my faith in them. And that's honestly why I have LSU slightly higher than Alabama, is because I know what I have with LSU in their quarterback position. Alabama's quarterback position is a little questionable, but I do still think they're going to be in the playoff mix. They're going to be right there at the end, fighting for the SEC championship game. But I do just like Texas and Georgia slightly above them. But I think slightly above them, but I think Alabama's still going to be right there at the end. My 9 seed, I have Oregon. Oregon, they're going to take a step back from last year, clearly, in my opinion, but they're going to be that third level Big Ten team, that third Big Ten team in the mix. Arizona State, I have Arizona State as my Big 12 winners. I don't have a lot of faith in that. That conference is very wishy washy. Um, it's so deep. Any team and every team has a chance to win. But I do think Arizona State rises above. They're bringing back Sam Levitt. Jordan Tyson, the wide receiver from last year's back. I've heard the starting running back. I've heard there's 2 running backs, or maybe just one. I can't even think of his name. That's replacing Cam Scatterby. I've heard good things about him and Dillingham. I like him as a coach in that Big 12. I have Louisville. I also do have one Big 12 team making it, unfortunately. I have Louisville as the 11th seed. I do think Louisville is going to be the ACC runner up. I have two ACC teams making the playoffs. I know a lot of other people have Miami. I do think Louisville will be the ACC runner up and the 11 seed. I have them going 10-2. I think 10-2 with their schedule. They play Miami, they play Clemson, they play SMU. Um, you know, however good Kentucky's going to be this year, that could be a nice SEC bump. I do think 10-2 with that schedule is enough, especially if they do make it to the ACC championship game, and even if they just lost, I do think losing the ACC championship game and have ending the season at 10-2 is enough to put them into the playoffs. And then Boise State, I think Boise State is the best Group of Five team. So I know they lost Ashton Genty, but they still got a lot of talent on that team, and I do think they'll make it. So for round one, we got 5 Ohio State versus 12 Boise State, 6 Notre Dame versus 11 Louisville, 7 LSU versus 10 Arizona State. We have 8 Alabama versus 9 Oregon. And I do think in the Ohio State Boise State game, I clearly like Ohio State. I just think they're just too much for Boise State. When it comes to Notre Dame and Louisville, unfortunately, this game, I think this game will be very, very competitive, and Louisville always plays Notre Dame. We beat them 2 years ago. We lost by a touchdown with a chance to tie it last year. Like, they play close a lot. So I do think Louisville has a fight against Notre Dame, but I think Notre Dame is just too much. The ground game, their defense is just a little too much. I think it'll be a close game, but I do slightly like Notre Dame, and unfortunately, this is where the season ends for my cards. I have number 7 LSU versus number 10 Arizona State. I do think LSU wins. Arizona State, hey, they almost knocked Texas off last year, but I do think LSU just has too much talent on that team, and I think Garrett Nussmeier is going to be playing extremely well this year. And then I have Alabama versus Oregon. Like I said, I do think Oregon is going to be a good team this year, but I just think Dante Moore, I don't know what you have with him. And they lost a lot of talent, especially on that offensive line last year. I think they won the best offensive line award last year, or they were definitely a finalist, and they lost, I think, 3 or 4 of those guys. Um, so the offensive line, I think, is going to be very questionable for Oregon. And I think Alabama's defense is just going to be too good this year. So I do like Alabama to win that one. So for round two, we'll have 5 Ohio State versus 4 Clemson. We'll have 8 Alabama versus number 1 Penn State. We'll have 6 Notre Dame versus 3 Georgia. And we'll have 7 LSU versus number 2 Texas. And with the Ohio State and Clemson matchup, I like Clemson over Ohio State. Clemson, man, I when you give Dabo Sweeney that a great team, he is such a good coach, man. He is such a good coach, and he gets his team ready to play when he has a great team. I know the last couple of years his team and roster hasn't been well, but I think this is his best roster since the Trevor Lawrence National Championship. So I do like Clemson over Ohio State, and especially since they have experience, and especially a quarterback with experience. In a playoff matchup, I trust Kate Klubnik more than I would trust Julian Saying. So I do think Clemson moves on. Penn State versus Alabama. I think Penn State is just going to be locked in this year, and I just don't see them losing that game against Alabama, especially, like I said, with Clemson. They'll have a quarterback with experience. He was in this game late last year, make a couple mistakes. I do think he'll learn from them, and I do think he'll put his team in a position to win against Alabama. And then we'll have 3 Georgia versus 6 Notre Dame, a rematch from last year. And I do think, unfortunately, this is where Georgia goes down. Like I said, it's hard to bet against Georgia and Kirby Smart, but this is going to be a very similar matchup to last year. And I just thought it was a bad matchup for Georgia last year, surprisingly. And I do think Notre Dame in the trenches, they're going to be elite. Their defense is going to be elite. And again, I do think Marcus Smart will get those guys ready to play. Notre Dame will take Georgia. And LSU versus Texas. I like Texas. Sark. he's going to have that thing rolling. And I think Texas, kind of like Penn State, they're just going to be rolling. And it's hard for me to see teams beating those two right now. For the quarterfinals or semifinals, we'll have Clemson versus Penn State and Notre Dame versus Texas. This is where the road ends for Clemson. I think Penn State handles them, not handles them. This will be a good, tough game, but I do think Penn State has the edge. Clemson, we'll see how they are this year. Last year, they were horrible at stopping the run. That playoff game against Texas, Wisner went off on them. Obviously, against Louisville, Isaac Brown destroyed them. Um, and Penn State, they're going to have probably a top three backfield in the country, top four backfield in the country, with probably with Louisville and Notre Dame. Katron Allen, Nicholas Singleton, I think will run all over Clemson, and I think they'll get the job done. And Texas versus Notre Dame. Um, like I said, Texas, they're just elite. They're going to have guys everywhere. That defensive line is going to be elite. So I think they'll have the defensive line to match up against Notre Dame and win that advantage. So I do have Texas winning that one. And like I said, I do think Texas and Penn State are going to be it's going to be the championship game. And I'm sticking to my guns, man. I've been talking about Penn State really since last year. I thought they were going to be the team last year. They got close. They're bringing their guys back. Michigan did it. I know I keep bringing it up, but Michigan did it. Ohio State did it. And I think Penn State follows suit. I think the Big Ten wins the third straight national championship. And I do think Penn State is going to be the national championship winner this year. Um, so, yeah, that is my playoff predictions. Again, these are predictions, and the college football season is insane. You never know what's going to happen. Every year, a top 10 team falls out of the top 25. Every year, an unranked team finishes ranked and in the top 10. So, like I said, we don't know what's going to happen. So, uh, take all this with a grain of salt. Don't come for me if this is completely wrong and none of these teams even make the college football playoffs. But I have high faith that half the teams will make this. So, yeah, that's it. Wanted to get one more preseason podcast in. We got week one coming up this week, so we're going to be doing some previews this week, some of my betting favorites, some locks that I have coming into week one. We're going to try and touch on a lot of games this week because there is a lot of games to touch on. I think we have 3 top 10 matchups, 4 or 5 ranked matchups. It's going to be a feast. So I'm excited. College football is back. Football is back, baby. Let's go. Thank you for watching.